Do you like civilizations? Do you like a fancy fantasy setting? Then you might want to take a look at this game, Endless Legend. But what is it exactly? Well, basically it's a turn-based strategy game, a 4X game. 4X, of course, standing for Explore, Expand, Exploit and Exterminate. I'll try to give you a basic overview of what this game is all about and what features it has. For explanatory reasons, I'm gonna draw some parallels to Civilization 5, since this is a game a lot of people know and love. This game struck me a lot similar to Civ 5, but there are some distinctive differences. For example, a quest system and a unit designer. For this review, I only played single player so far, and I deactivated most of the expansions and DLCs, so we can look at the core gameplay. Alright, with that said, let's go! Alright, we are in the new game screen and we're gonna look at the available factions right now. This screen might look familiar to Civ 5 players, because basically it's, well, the same thing. You choose how many opponents you want, the map specifics, etc. So let's look what factions we have available. Basically there are 8 major factions you can choose from, and there are 2 other factions that are DLC. Well, one of them, the Mizari, are like a reskin of the Walters, I have read, so that's technically 9 factions then, with the Forgotten here. So we got the Wild Walkers, the Broken Lords, the Volters, the Necrophages, the Ardent Mages, the Roving Clans, the Draken, and the Cultists. This may look like a very small selection if you compare it to Civ 5's amount of different civilizations to pick from. But the thing is, each of these factions are actually very different. Let's click on this faction here, and you're gonna see some information about it. There is their preferred victory type. For this faction it's Wonder. I'll explain later what that is all about. And there's some fluff, some history you can read about. Then there are the base units this faction can produce. The Kari Ranger, Agachi Shaman, I'm butchering these names horribly probably. Tenai Walker, also again with some fluff. And there are the most important thing, in my opinion, the traits. This is what makes the factions so different from each other faction. For example, one of the very special traits, if we go to the Broken Lords here, appetite for dust. They cannot see, gather or use food, which is basically used to grow your cities. They can't do that. How do they get population? With coins. So that's special, that's really unique. Or the Cultists, which are the Venice of this game, to speak in Civilization 5 terms, they can only have one city, but they get a lot of bonuses in that city. So yeah, every Civ here, every faction has kind of unique traits, and you might have seen it already. There's a button down here called Add, and that is one of my favorite features in this game. The Faction Customization tool. This allows you to create your own custom faction. First you will select an affinity, which gives you the basic design of a certain faction, and it gives you some traits that are fixed, which include a special unique trait for each faction, 3 base units, and the main story quest of this faction. All of the traits can be exchanged and played around with. So here we're gonna delete all of these, which you can see has freed up some trait points down there. This is like the max amount of trait points you can add. And now on the left side, you can add from this huge list here traits to your likings. They're categorized in diplomacy, economy, military, starting technology, which gives you a technology right from the start of the game without researching it, which is cool. Technology, which gives you unique technologies to research, and various, which, well, it only has one thing for now, but there might be more. So now you can also see there are traits that give you minus points. These are negative things you can add to your faction, which free up a bit more trait points for other positive things. So you can create a really one-sided faction that is good in one thing, but bad in all others. So yeah, we're gonna jump into a save game now, where I'll show you the basics of the game. There we are! As you can see, the map looks like you would expect from a game like this. It's hexagon-shaped fields. So first let's take a look at what kind of resources there are in this game. Let me click on my city to show you. The game calls them FITSI. Food, the crop symbol, which is used to grow the population of your city. Industry, which is used to produce units and buildings. Science, which determines how fast you will research new technologies. Dust, this is this universe's equivalent to money, basically, or coins. And influence, which is a kind of special resource because it's used for so-called empire plans, which give you empire-wide bonuses, and for diplomacy, which is kind of special. There are also luxury and strategic resources. Luxury resources can give your empire a temporary boost once you collected enough of them, and strategic resources are needed for certain buildings and units. You might have noticed there's a blue border around my city here. Basically, every field inside this blue border gets exploited, which means it adds its resource to my empire each turn. You may have also noticed there's a blue border on the outside here. Well, this is basically how this game handles like your territory. It's not like in Civilizations where the territory is your city and then it grows based on your population. That's not true. Here, if we zoom out, you see the map is divided in regions. And once you build a city in a region, the whole region is claimed for your empire. So you can see I have like these two regions here, which means I have these two cities. Of course, the question is now, how do cities grow in this game? It's actually pretty easy, I can show you that. Let's pause the turn, actually. Yeah, I know, my cities don't have a thingy, I don't care, really. Ta-da! Now, the population of my city has grown. And every 2 population, I can build a special building called Borough Streets. I can place it somewhere inside the blue city border. And when I do, all adjacent fields that are not yet under the city's control, are not yet exploited, will get exploited once the building is finished. So if I place it here, you will see that these 3 fields here will get added to my city territory. So you have to choose carefully which fields you want to exploit next. It's careful planning. Also, there are some special buildings that you can place in certain fields of your region. This is the case for luxury and strategic resources. For example, you can see here, that's a strategic resource, glass steel. I already built a glass steel extractor here. You can do that anytime as long as the resource is in a territory you control. You can build the reactor there once you have the research required. Everything else for this game is pretty standard. If we compare it to Civ 5, I mean, there are standard different terrain types which give you different resources. The only thing a bit special is there are so-called anomalies. These are like special terrain features which give you bonuses. For example, this is a azotic exotics, whatever that is. And this gives me +4 food on this tile, so this is especially good. And it also gives me 2 science. You can always read what the field gives you exactly at the bottom left corner there. And there are a lot of different anomalies in this game. I mean, a ton of it. So this makes it quite a good variety of terrain you can encounter. I think pretty much all the terrain is positive. I've never seen a negative anomaly, but there might be. So also a special thing, if I click on my city here, you see up here where you can see the production of your city, you see these little worker symbols. For each population you basically get a worker. And what you can do is you can select them. For example, I select 2 workers here and drag them around. And if I drag them to dust, they will increase my dust production. So you can shift whatever production you need the most at the moment. So if you want to rush a food production, or if you have something important you want to build, or you can be like, I want a bit of everything. So it gives you, again, a lot of customization for what your city wants to do. Something else there is in this game is a seasons system. Basically, there are 2 seasons in this game, winter and summer. In the winter you get severe penalties to your movement and production, mainly of food, I think. So it's a nice little touch, and you have to plan your military movement especially, which is very important in the winter when you get reduced movement and such. Alright, next let's look at the science tree, which is always an interesting thing in these kind of games. There we go. So, as you can see, the science, the technology is grouped in 6 tiers, or 6 eras. Currently I'm in era 2, which means I can pick researches from this era here, era 1 or era 2. Also, you might have noticed, there are no prerequisite technologies. So there is no technology that needs another technology to be researched first. The only thing you need to do is to be in the certain era, and then you can research it. The green ones are the ones you can research, and blue is already completed researches. Also, these era trees are divided in like 4 categories to make it more easy to find stuff. There is economy and population, military, science and industry, and empire and expansion. If you hover over one of these researches, you get the cost, which, like in Civilization, goes up with each technology you research. And you get a little, like, story thingy, the effects. Also a cool thing, of course, is it has like a research queue, which is pretty neat. And the thing is, if you want to advance to the next era, so if I want to have technologies available from era 3, I need to research 9 technologies of the previous era. At the moment, I'm, I think, 8 out of 9 technologies. So if I finish this one, which I can see down here, it takes 2 turns, I will be able to get to era 3 and get these technologies here. Alright, so the gameplay, I don't want to go too deep into that because it's pretty standard for a game like this. You can build buildings or units, and it has also a building queue here in each city, which is actually a feature I missed from Civilization 5. I really did. Everything else is pretty basic. You can instantly buy things from your building queue with dust. So that's pretty standard. How do you win in this game? There are several different victory types. Actually, there are 9. Well, technically. The first one is Wonder, which basically involves you building a certain building, which I think can only be built like in Era 5, and it takes a lot of resources. So it's more of a passive, not so aggressive victory type. There is Quest, which involves the quest system, which I'll show you in a bit. And basically you have, each faction has like a faction story quest, which gives you a lot of the background history of your faction and how the faction tries to exist in the future, etc, etc. And if you complete the whole like story quest of your faction, you win the game. This is also more of a passive one. Then are the more offensive victories, which are Expansion, which involves you conquering 80% of all territories. It doesn't matter which territories, you just have to have 80% of all available territories. And then there is Supremacy, which says you win if you are the last faction who has its original capital, which is kinda special, because this means you can actually win even if you have not conquered any other capital. For example, if there are 3 players in a game, and player A captures player B's capital, and vice versa, player C wins. That's a bit weird, but yeah, that can happen. Next one is Elimination, which is you have to be the last faction alive. So you have to wipe out all other factions to win, which is impossible if you have the Supremacy and Expansion victories enabled. Because if you are wiping out all other factions, you are bound to have 80% of all territories or all capitals conquered, pretty much. So that's a bit of a weird one, or an optional one, so to speak. Then there is the Scientific victory, which if we go to our research tree again, you see in Era 6, there are like 6 technologies. They're super effective technologies. They basically do all the same. 100% dust on cities, 100% production on cities, etc, etc. And once you have 5 of these 6 technologies researched, you win the game. So that's the research victory. Then there is Economy victory, which is quite interesting. It involves you having a certain amount of dust produced during the game. So this is more for like trading factions, or I think the Broken Lords are also very good at this victory type because they basically produce a ton of dust, so you can win this way. And there is also a Diplomacy victory. This one involves you gathering a lot of diplomacy points. And diplomacy points are basically earned for every diplomacy action you take. And I think you also earn points when you are at peace with a certain empire. So it's also a more passive playstyle, but I'll show you the diplomacy system later. It's quite an interesting one. And then the last victory type is Score. This is an optional victory type. You have to activate this one. This basically means after a certain amount of rounds, the game ends, and then the score is counted for each faction, and the one with the highest score wins. Alright, let's look at the quest system and ruins. If we go up here, you see this is the quest menu. Here you can see all the quests you have acquired and all you have completed or failed. At the moment I have like my faction quest, which here is a little history. It's quite a lot actually, so I would suggest if you want to have like a little history lesson, play this in single player. If you want to read the whole fluff in a multiplayer game, I think people are gonna kill you. Then there's a little summary, the outcome, which basically means have you fulfilled the quest or not. the objective, what do you need to do, and the reward. Each quest gives you a reward. These rewards reach from resources, like in this case, sometimes you get units or a technology, it differs. Faction quests, you will start your faction quest from like turn 2, and then every time you complete it you get a new one. But there are also, let me find one, somewhere on the map, things like this. Ruins and temples. These are basically like the ruins in Civ 5. Once you explore them with a hero or a unit, you'll get like a random thing from them. Sometimes it's resources, and sometimes it's nothing, and sometimes it's actually a quest you can get. Alright. Next thing we want to look at is the so-called minor factions. In each territory, you get at least one settlement of a minor faction. You can think of these as like city-states in Civ 5. But they don't have like a huge border, a huge city. They basically just have like a little settlement, like this one here. This is the Dorgeshi. And at the beginning of the game, they are neutral, and they will spawn units from time to time. You can attack these units, sometimes they will actually attack you. And with the city itself, with the settlement, you can interact. Basically, you can convert this city to your empire. You can make them friendly to you, so they won't attack you anymore. You can do this through force, you just destroy them, pretty much, or you can talk to them and gain a quest from them. If you fulfill this quest, they will be on your side without bloodshed. Once you have allied yourself with a minor faction, through force or through quest, you can assimilate them into your empire. What this does is it gives you like a specific bonus, which is dependent on the minor faction, and you will get a new unit type to produce, also based on faction. And there are a ton of minor factions in this game. I think there are about 12 or 18 different minor factions, each with their special unit and their bonuses. And this makes also for quite a variety. This brings me to the next cool feature, speaking of units and unit types. The unit designer. As you can see here, these are all the units I have already researched and unlocked. So my faction units, I have like the ranger and the settler, and this one is from the minor faction. It's like a cavalry unit. And you have seen it here, a new button. Let's click that. When you click that, you can like select the base model of the new unit. Let's take the ranger here. Ta-da! This is the unit designer. Basically, you can customize your units. You can give them different kinds of weapons and armors, like this. And you can give them little trinkets, rings and amulets, talismans, all the good stuff. And basically this changes what the unit does. For example, if I give them a crossbow, they'll get like special abilities. They get point blank power, which gives them plus 10 attack when they're performing a close range attack. Or I can give them a bow, which gives them flying slayer, for example. So this is really dependent on what strategy you're going for. You can choose your equipment accordingly. Also, there's like, based on the resources you have, for example, I have glass, steel and titanium, you can also make different kinds of shields in this example. It's always the same item type, it's a shield, but it gives you different bonuses. For example, this one gives me plus 6 defense, plus 10% life, and this one gives me plus 6 defense and plus 10% defense. So it's really customizable. The only minor thing here that I don't like is the visual customization is not that good. I mean, it's cool that it switches the weapon based on what you give them. That's pretty cool. But I would liked it more if you could see like the armor on it as well. You don't. That's a bit... yeah. I don't know, I'm just a visual guy sometimes, and I would like to see like different armor and... if you get like a really high level unit with the best armor, it still looks like this with a better weapon, basically. So yeah, then you enter your name. This is like the fancy ranger, and down here you see the production cost. This means each time I want to produce one of these, it costs me 280 industry, and since I chosen this weapon here, it costs also 9 titanium. So yeah, there we go. You can also edit units you already have, and then you can upgrade your units which are not yet up to date to the new unit type, so it's pretty cool. Alright. So now we have seen the units, but there are also heroes. If I click on a hero, it looks kind of the same as a unit builder here. And that's true, you can equip your heroes with different weapons and different armors. But the hero also has a skill tree. And this skill tree has always 3 categories. One is common, which is the same for all heroes. One is based on the class of the hero. This one is arranged. So if you have a melee, you have different kind of skill set here. And one is based on your faction. And the cool thing about this here is that a hero does not necessarily need to be a combat hero. I mean, there are combat abilities like this one, plus 12 attack on units. But there are also passive abilities, like this one, minus 30% dust on a city upkeep. So you can put your heroes into armies and fight with them, but you can also put them onto cities and boost the production of said city. So this gives you, again, a lot of customization, a lot of different ways to play. Pretty cool. And don't worry, heroes that are in cities will get experience. So it's not like if you put your hero into a city, he will be at level 1 forever. That's not true. Alright, so for the next point I want to show you, I'm gonna jump into a new save game, because now we're gonna look at the combat system. Alright, here we are in the new save game. This is a game with broken lords. We're pretty advanced here already in turn 259. I've already conquered a lot of territory, and as you would expect, there's a lot of fighting going on. So this here says there's a battle about to begin against the cultists, these guys, the orange guys. So every time a battle is about to begin, this screen pops up. This basically tells you what kind of troops are involved in the battle. There are always one main army which has to fight, and there are reinforcements which you can deactivate. So for example, my settler was nearby, so he could join the battle, which is pretty useless, so I'll deactivate the settler here. Then here you'll see like the combat chances, so this one is actually pretty 50-50, as it seems. You can choose to fight the battle manually, you can automatically resolve it, or you can be a spectator, which does the same as auto-resolve, but you get to watch the units speed up each other, so you get to see the fighting, but it's all automatic. For demonstration purposes, we obviously gonna fight it manually, or at least we're gonna start to fight manually. We click ready to fight, and then the combat begins. So you can see before we had only like a few little armies there, and now they have like split up. Each unit in the army has now appeared So these are our two main armies here. And before the battle begins, there's like a deployment phase. So I can choose which units are going where. So I can switch the deployment here if I want to. Bring my hero to the front. There we go. And then I can click ready. And as soon as I do that, the first reinforcements will appear, you will see. There we go, here are reinforcements already. And now this looks complicated for the start, maybe. But it's actually pretty simple. Basically you don't control your units per se, so you're not like, oh, you attack especially this guy here and then he does it. It doesn't work this way. You set the target in this phase, so you can say, you try to target this guy, you try to target this guy, etc, etc. So let me just do some targeting here. And the thing about this is, they will try to get to the target, but if they can't, they might also do something else. So let's say this unit here cannot reach the Minotaur. They might go to the guy next to it and attack them. So you do not have 100% control over your units, which sometimes can be a bit of a burden. Once I click on launch, all units will attack accordingly. Basically, each unit has one attack per turn, and the attacks are done by initiative. So each unit has an initiative here, and on top here you see which units act on which stage. So my hero here, Valete Safiri Kugua II, acts first because her initiative is pretty damn high. Then next will this one be initiative 111, then their hero, and so forth and so forth. So the thing is, if a unit gets attacked that has not attacked yet, for example, if my hero here attacks this Minotaur, which has not attacked yet, we both will attack each other. But the Minotaur will lose his initiative here. This is pretty interesting. So if you have, for example, an enemy unit which is extremely strong but not so fast in initiative, so that means if you don't want that big guy to hit your fragile units, you can attack him with one of your tank units with higher initiative to take away his attack, so to speak, so you can tank him. Which is interesting, because it opens up a lot of tactical room to play with. So now we're gonna launch the attack here. Let's see what happens. At the moment I have combat animations enabled. You can disable them. For example, you wanna do that for multiplayer, I suppose. Now we can see she's gonna attack the Minotaur, and now look at top here. Yeah, he is grayed out, so he has already acted. So once his turn comes, he will not act anymore. Same with my warriors here. So yeah, the battle will go on like this, and it will go on for 6 rounds at max. After 6 rounds, should there still be units on both sides, the battle will end and it will be considered a draw. So let's just play it out a little bit. You can also see beautifully here the many different unit types. Here are the Broken Lord ones. Yeah, you see I have guys with 2-handed swords and one with shield and swords. There the base unit is the same, but I've changed the equipment. And he has a lot of minor faction units. He has these Ice Titans. He has the Minotaurs. He has some weird spider thingies. And this is a cultist unit. So yeah, there's a lot of different things. And all of these units have their special abilities. You can check them out. The Minotaur, for example, is immune to winter. So he has no penalties during winter. He's a cavalry slayer. So there's a ton of different things. So you just saw this unit just running back here. It didn't do anything. I couldn't control what it does. So yeah, sometimes it's a bit frustrating what your unit does. Yeah, we're not gonna play out the whole battle here. Let me reload the save file real quick to show you the next feature, which is the diplomacy. Okay, so we're still in the same save as before. Now I'm gonna show you the diplomacy system, which in my mind is pretty special. Let's click here. This is like the diplomacy screen, in which you can see the other factions in the game and how they are in relation to you. At the moment, these two here, the green Broken Lords and the red, like, Missouris, I think they're called, are already eliminated. I killed them. And there are some necrophages, some more Missouri, and the cultists. And here these symbols basically tell you in what relation there are. So this one is alliance. This is like the closest one. Then there is peace, Cold War, and war. So I'm at war with the necrophages, but I'm only at Cold War with the other two factions. So now let's click on one of the leaders. For example, let's click on the cultists. And you're gonna see here, this is like the negotiations screen. And here you have your options. What can you offer them? At the moment there's not much I can offer them because we're at Cold War, I think. There are like two types of actions here. There is a request, which is like the question mark here, and there are declarations, which they cannot really do something about that. But a request they can either accept or decline. And you can see these cost actually influence. So if I want to make an offer of peace, which at the moment it seems they're probably gonna refuse, this will cost me some influence. And the cool thing about that is, depending on what relation you have with a certain empire, certain things might be more costly than others. For example, if I am at an alliance with somebody and I will want suddenly to declare war on them, that will be a lot more costly than it would normally be. So this is a kind of interesting system, to be honest. And of course there's always the same thing that every like Civilization 5 veteran will ask, I suppose, which is, does this actually make diplomacy a viable thing in multiplayer? And I mean, not only diplomacy, but also diplomacy victory. And yeah, kinda. It kinda does. Because to win by diplomacy, you have to do diplomacy actions. So every time you do something like you close borders, you compliment them, you get diplomacy points, which are used, which you use to win the game by diplomatic victory. And if you have an alliance or a peace contract with people, you get diplomacy points per turn. And it might work actually, because there are a lot of things that the other factions do not have a say in. So you can just make declarations to them, and that will give you diplomacy points. So as long as you have enough influence to do it, you might actually win this way. And the Draken faction, which is like specialized in diplomacy, can even force certain things onto other factions. They can forcefully make a peace contract with you, which is really fun. So yeah, might be possible to win in multiplayer with diplomacy, which was pretty much impossible at Civ 5, in my opinion. So yeah, that's it actually. That's like the basic overview of all the neat little things that are in this game. Of course there's a lot of more stuff, and I know I didn't show a lot of gameplay, in this little video, but I wanted just to show you what cool features are in the game. And you know, if you would like to see more gameplay, I can do that, but only if you really want me to do that. So my verdict on this game, the positive things are, in my opinion, definitely the customization of everything, of your units, of your faction, of your gameplay. Another positive is, of course, the different victory types in this game, which allow you a lot of ways to play. And overall, it's a very solid game. There are a bit of negative things, one of which is like a personal thing for me, is the visual customization, which could be a bit better, in my opinion. And another thing that I could see that could become a problem in multiplayer especially is the waiting time, especially during war. I know that in Civ 5 during war there was a lot of waiting time, and here it could be even more, because if you have these really huge battles which will drag on for 6 rounds, I can guarantee you that, there might just be a lot of waiting time for other players, and I'm not sure that's a good thing. I know the turn type in multiplayer is like the hybrid turn style in Civilization 5, so everyone can move at the same time, but still, once 2 factions battle with each other, I am pretty sure the other ones are gonna be bored as hell. And also unit customization in multiplayer, if you really want to go in deep and like design your units, and for example, look at how many units I have designed. If I would do that in multiplayer, like have like 3 different designs for each unit type, I would waste a lot of time of other players. So I cannot really see how this is gonna work in multiplayer, but to be fair, I've not yet played a real multiplayer match. I have tried a bit of stuff with a friend in multiplayer, but we didn't get far. But yeah, overall, this is a pretty cool game. It's available on Steam, and you can like buy a big bundle which includes 2 other games from the same company, Endless Space and Dungeon of the Endless. And I'm gonna take a look at these 2 games as well, because I bought that big bundle, so I'm gonna pretty much review the other games as well, I guess, because they look quite fun. So yeah, that's all. I hope you liked this one. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.